But first, can you share a couple of the challenges that we faced? I know even just getting to the church you mentioned in Colombia was a big challenge, but
Oh yeah,
what comes to your mind when I bring up these challenges that we face?
the pandemic.
Well,
That,
hopefully that's a one-off.
well, yes. So I do want to talk about it a little bit though, because I think that our experience, it's more in depth than other families will experience. Everybody's going to have a challenge at some point, right? But we were in Malaysia at a World School pop up with a few dozen other families, and we knew that COVID existed, we knew it was around, but it honestly never occurred to me that the world would change so dramatically. So we had friends who were being told by some of their travel insurance companies, if you don't leave, we are not going to cover you anymore because the country that you're in is a stage whatever risk factor. I think it's like stage 3 or something. And we won't cover you. So we had friends who had to leave because their travel insurance wouldn't cover them anymore. And then all of a sudden, Malaysia started talking about closing borders, and more people left. And we don't have a home base, right? Like, we don't have anywhere to go back to. And we're Americans. So going back to the US doesn't sound appealing in and of itself. So we stayed in Malaysia for the 2 week period, quote unquote, of border closures. Well, we all know what happened with that. A 2 week border closure turned into 13 months of being stuck in Malaysia. I will say we were happily stuck in Malaysia. Technically, we could have left at any time. The Kuala Lumpur airport did not close completely. There were occasional, incredibly expensive flights that we could have left Malaysia at any time. But between the meat shortages and food shortages and toilet paper shortages the US was experiencing, no thank you. We stayed in Malaysia. The numbers, for the most part, were fairly low. And yes, we were locked down more dramatically than other countries experienced. But knowing what I know now, I still would have done the same thing. I wouldn't have left. I'm glad we stayed. Malaysia was an incredibly gracious host country during the early stages of the pandemic. I look forward to someday when we get to go back and visit again. But that fear, that uncertainty, that not knowing was just next level feelings. I remember those days. I remember how worried I was. I was always checking, okay, if they don't extend tourist overstay amnesty, where can we go? Because at one point, the entire world was like a level 4 travel advisory, do not travel, by the US State Department, which is not logical for people like us. You know, if we have to go, we have to go. So I was always researching, I always had backup plans. It was really stressful. It was really, really tough. So I'm hoping that never happens again and that we can find a way to work through it. But I also know that if I can get through navigating the uncertainty of a pandemic in a foreign country when no one knows what's going on, we can do anything. We can do absolutely anything. It just takes an open mind, a very high tolerance of stress, and good friends, because we were lucky. We had a few other families who were in the same boat as us who did stay. They stuck it out with us. And, they were my saving grace while we were going through those early stages. I could text them at any hour of the day. And if I wasn't sleeping, they weren't sleeping. It was a lot. So I'm really glad we had that to work with.